This video will show you how to replace the front brakes, pads, and rotors on a Pontiac Grand Prix. This will be located behind your front wheel. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. The first thing we have to do is safely raise and support the front end of the vehicle so the wheel's off the ground. After that, remove all 5 of your 19mm lug nuts and we can get the wheel off of here. Now that we have the wheel off, we have a clear view of our front brakes. Let's make our way in towards the caliper. Now looking at the caliper, we're looking at this square notch. We're going inside of this port. I'm using a small prying device. I'm going up against the caliper and up against my brake rotor. I want to carefully try to pry my caliper outward, pushing in on my caliper piston. Now this is the movement we want to see. Let's continue on to our 2 caliper slider pins. We can see that we have a 15mm headed pin here. This goes through the caliper into the bracket. We have the same thing up along the top. There's our first pin. Just a quick inspection of this, but I'm going to start it back in. That will help prevent this from falling off while we continue on to the next piece of hardware. 15mm here as well. While I remove that slider pin, let's have a close look at the very end. On the lower slider pin, I can see that I do have a rubber vibration dampener. Pay attention to the location of that during the installation process. Once everything's cleaned and lubricated, this pin will go into the exact same port. For now, I'm going to set it aside. Let's hold on to the caliper. We'll remove that upper slider pin. Now we're going to slide the caliper out and away from the brake pads and brake rotor. Once you have that out of place, inspect along the piston. We want to make sure we have that fully compressed inward and there's no fluid making its way out from the dust boot. If there's fluid around the dust boot, that means the internal seal on the caliper is bad and you'd want to replace it. We're going to set this aside, putting no pressure on our flex hose. I'm just using a small hook. Now we're going to remove our 2 brake pads. Typically these will slide out of place. Once you've removed them, I always like to give them a quick inspection. Look to see if they're worn at an angle. If they are worn at an angle, you might have an issue with one of the slider pins sticking inside of the caliper bracket. One other thing that I would note on the brake pads, pay attention to the wear indicator. It's this small metal tab. That should be on the inboard side. We'll set this aside. Now at this point, we're going to remove the caliper bracket. We have 2 15mm bolts along the rearward side. So now looking along the back side here, we can see our 2 15mm headed mounting bolts. I'm going to fully remove the upper bolt. A quick inspection, start it back in a couple threads prior to moving along to the lower bolt. We'll hold on to the caliper bracket, remove that bolt, remove the caliper bracket. Now we will be cleaning and inspecting this. For now, let's set it aside. Remove that brake rotor. There it is, friend. Now prior to installing any brand new part, of course we want to make sure we clean and inspect our mounting area. So we're starting by looking at our wheel bearing hub mating surface. We need to make sure this is a clean surface, so when we do put on the brand new brake rotor, we won't get a brake pulsation. I'm just going to use this small sanding disc. We'll also be using a small wire brush in between the lug studs and the hub. We want to try to remove any miscellaneous debris from there as well. We'll give it a quick rinse with some parts cleaner. I always like to use some anti-seize along this surface once it's cleaned. There we are. Let's prepare the brand new brake rotor for installation. We're going to clean both sides of the brake rotor braking surfaces. Install the brake rotor. Now at this point, I like to make sure the brake rotor will not move around as I continue on, so I'm just going to use a small spacer and one of my original lug nuts. We're going to hold this in position while we continue on. Now it's time to focus on our caliper bracket. The first thing we have to do is remove our caliper bracket tins. You have one on each side of the caliper bracket. We'll pry those out of place. You can do it by hand or use a small prying device if necessary. We'll set those aside for recycling. Continuing on, we need to make sure we clean down the areas where those tins were. For that, you can use a wire brush, some sandpaper, or even a sanding disc if necessary. That one looks good. That looks good. I'm just going to repeat the process on the opposite side of the bracket. Now we're going to clean the caliper slider pin ports. One thing I would note about these is it's impossible to remove the boot without causing damage. So unless you intend on replacing it, you want to be extremely careful. If you were to use some type of parts cleaner inside of this area, it might swell the boot. So I'm going to be using a nylon bore brush. I don't want to use metal because I don't want to cause any damage. What I'm attempting to do is remove as much debris from inside of the caliper slider pin port as possible. Do the same on the other side. I'm just going to rinse my brush. The next thing I'll do is take a rag. I'm going to give it a gentle twist. We'll slide it inside of the boot. Now I'm just going to roll the boot around on that rag. We'll do the same for the other port. Double check each one of the boots to confirm they're not swollen or damaged in any way. Let's continue on with high temperature caliper lubricant along each side of the caliper bracket where we had removed the tins. When applying this, you don't need very much. This is going to help with vibration dampening, noise reduction, and help keep moisture away from the area so you don't get rust build up. In with your brake pads, you're going to find it came with 4 brand new tins. They all look the same. You don't have to worry about mixing them up. We'll line them up, press them in, listen for a click, and of course make sure they are secured in place. I'll just do the same for the other side. There we go. That's secured. This bracket looks good. I'm going to set it aside. Let's have a quick look at our caliper slider pins next. As far as our 2 caliper slider pins, as you remember, one of them does have a vibration dampener at the end. During the cleaning process, we want to make sure that that vibration dampener is not swollen. If it's swollen, it might restrict movement of the caliper. So with that said, I'm just going to spray some parts cleaner directly on a rag. Now we can start wiping these down. A thorough inspection of the entire caliper slider pin, especially the smooth portion. If it looks like there's rust or rot, that could cause an issue with the maneuverability of the caliper. This does look good, so I'm going to set it aside and clean the other caliper slider pin. That pin looks good as well. Let's get back over to the vehicle. Of course, I've cleaned my caliper bracket bolts. Let's get that bracket in place. Slide it over the brake rotor, starting each one of the 2 caliper bracket bolts. Once you have them bolts started in, snug them up and then torque them to 133 foot-pounds. Now it's time for our brake pads. In our brake pad kit, we're taking one of the brake pads that does not have a wear indicator. That would be for the outboard pad. As far as the inboard pad, we want to have the wear indicator, but we want to pay attention to the wear indicator. During the installation process, when this is in the vehicle on the inboard side, the wear indicator is down along the bottom area. Let's start with the installation of the inboard pad. For this, I'm coming in at an angle into my caliper bracket, and I'm going to press it in towards my brake rotor. That should want to slide into place. Once it is in place, it should move around fairly freely. If you have to hammer it in position, you did not clean the caliper bracket well enough. Same process for the outboard pad. This does not have a wear indicator. That pad moves as well. Let's have a look at our caliper slider pins. We're applying high temperature caliper lubricant to the entire smooth shafted area of each one of the slider pins, all the way down to the very tip. Once you have those lubricated, we'll temporarily set them aside and focus on our caliper. As far as the caliper itself, I like to apply high temperature caliper lubricant along my caliper piston and along the inboard side of each one of my 2 ears on the caliper. This will also help with vibration dampening and noise reduction. Now let's get the caliper in place. We're bringing it up and over our brake pads. It should want to slide on there fairly easily, assuming you did push in on that caliper piston all the way in the beginning. Install your 2 caliper slider pins. As you remember, the one with the vibration dampener is down along the bottom. Once you have those snugged, go ahead and bottom them out and then torque them to 70 foot-pounds. Once you have that installed, the next thing you have to do is pay attention to your flex hose. Confirm it looks like this and it's not twisted in a way that might restrict brake fluid flow. This is perfect. Let's remove our lug nut and our spacer. Now one last quick inspection in this area and we can reinstall our wheel. Start on all 5 of your 19mm lug nuts. Once you have them all started on, snug them up. We'll get the wheel back on the ground and then torque each lug nut to 100 foot-pounds. Now that I have the wheel back on the ground, I'm going to be torquing each one of my lug nuts to that 100 foot-pounds in a crisscross manner. Torqued. Okay friend, we showed you how to replace the front brakes on one side of the vehicle. The process for one side is the exact same thing as the other. Once you've completed both sides' front brakes, make your way inside the passenger compartment, pump up the brake pedal until it feels firm, and take your vehicle for a road test. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.